Your military service was just one chapter of your story. Now it's time to write the next one. And this time, you're holding the pen. The skills, the discipline, the resilience that you developed in uniform are still with you to this day. They're just waiting to be channeled in new directions. Remember, your best days are not behind you. They are ahead of you, and they start right now. Welcome to the Vet Rise Podcast. I'm your host, Juan Perez. My goal is to make success after service accessible to every veteran in society. I believe in the power of leveraging your service, not as a label that defines you, but as a launching pad for your next chapter. What we have been doing has not been working, and it's on us to start changing the culture. Enjoy the episode, and thank you for your time. All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Vet Reset. My name is Juan Perez. You might know me as JP, the veteran coach. You might know me as just JP from social media. Maybe you're here from Facebook, from LinkedIn, from TikTok. Maybe you've been in the program before. Maybe you are in the program. The reason we're here today is to talk about the Vet Reset. This is going to provide you some value no matter how long you've been out, whether it's 1 year, 10 years, 15 years, or maybe you're still in. Maybe you're about to get out. The reason why we're here today is because I want to give you guys the 5 things that truly helped me get my life in order. You might know me as JP, the veteran coach, and I created this because I saw too many veterans struggling, myself included. Over the next hour, I'm going to show you the exact steps, my 5 pillars that took me from a 10-year rut to a total life reset. We're going to talk about rebuilding structure and discipline, creating connections that actually matter, controlling the ego and embracing growth, making sure we place ourselves first, and taking full ownership. If you are done coasting, this session will give you the blueprint to reclaim your drive, to help you ditch destructive efforts, destructive habits, and lead your own life with purpose. So I want you guys to make sure you have a notebook, clear out distractions, put your phones away, put them on mute if you can, and show up for yourself. Today is about real transformation and thinking about your post-military life. There is no half measures here. This is all about actionable steps that can shift everything for you. Veterans don't come back into society. They were never a part of it. Who remembers that? So that was one of my first videos that went viral a long time ago. And the more I think about it, the more it still applies today. Because when we get out of the service, we experience loss. We experience pain. We experience sorrow. And most of the time, we don't even know it, let alone address it. We ignore it. Now, most of us joined the military at 18. Those are our formative years. A lot of us signed up because we were misfits. We didn't fit in school. We wanted to belong to something bigger than ourselves. And then we found it. Whether it was the Marine Corps, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, whatever branch you served in, you found that brotherhood, that sisterhood, that community. And then you get out. And suddenly you feel lost. You experience isolation. You try to fit back into society, and before you know it, you are pulling from everywhere you can to try and get it all together, like an alien trying to survive on the wrong planet. Because no one explains to you that it's your responsibility to change. Society is not going to change for you. And this is a hard truth that we have to hear. We have to hear this truth. And it's going to be a little bit hard to hear for some of you, especially if you've been doing it for the wrong way for a long time. Not because it's your fault, but because nobody told you that there was another way. And again, this applies to everyone. Whether you've been out for 5 months, 5 years, 10 years, or even 20, this still applies to you. Life isn't just the way it is. Maybe you've built up this idea in your head that life is just the way it is and there's no change in it. But that's simply not true. We have to take ownership and change our lives. This is the only way that we can do that. The things we're talking about today can help you take ownership and start changing your life today. The 5 points I'm going to make today have the potential to completely shift your life, but only if you're willing. And I cannot reiterate this hard enough. These 5 points are things that you can start doing today and can truly start changing your life tomorrow. That's a guarantee because it's not just a bunch of hoopla. These things work. They are proven. And these are the things that helped me, and they've helped a lot of people in the program as well. So, the veteran skepticism and ownership. The skepticism trap. One of the things that happens when we get out is that we become skeptical to everything. We feel like the world is out to get us. And sometimes it feels easier to close off than to actually engage with the world. Now, here's the promise I'm giving you. If you show up and take this seriously, you can walk away from today with massive value. You can start making real changes and reach out to me 1 month from now telling me how your life has completely turned around. Or the alternative. Or you can zone out halfway through the masterclass. You can let it play in the background. You can walk away. You can half-ass it. You can take no notes. And you can wake up tomorrow exactly where you are at today. You're going to hit snooze again. You'll skip the gym again. You'll have another bender next month and blame someone else or something else. anything besides yourself, because that's easy. Blame is easy, but ownership, that is where the real work starts. So the only ask I have of you today is show up, be present, take notes, be honest with yourself, be vulnerable with yourself about what needs to change. This isn't a want, this is a need. Now the program. Now at the end of the masterclass, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my program. Because if this is the value that you get today, if there's a lot of value that you get today from me for free, just imagine what it's like inside Vet Rise Academy. But I want to tell you, my purpose here today is not to sell you. I'm here to serve you, to give you real actionable tools to start changing your life today. Because for me, it's not about making money. It's about making an impact. It's about helping just one person change their life. It's about helping you learn the lesson without the scar. So my challenge to you today is make sure you are in a mindset of self-reflection. Not everything I say today is going to apply to you, but I challenge you to ask yourself, where can I make a change? What can I take away from today to make change happen? I want you to audit your life. That is step one. Self-awareness and ownership begin with auditing where you are at right now. And I want you to face the hard truth. Because the hard truth is, if you don't have something, it's because you don't deserve it yet. And that's going to ruffle some feathers. But let it sit with you. If you don't have it, it's because you haven't done the work to earn it. And let's talk about the path forward. It's simple. I want you to be clear, stay consistent, and then execute on what we talked about today. Now, why? Why should you listen to me? Because I've made every mistake in the book. I've hit rock bottom. I was an egotistical veteran who pushed everyone away. I drank every day. I was angry at the world. I had false expectations. I thought I should have had it all figured out by now, and I didn't. And I refused to ask for help. I was in a wrong environment. I surrounded myself with people who were stuck just like me. I neglected my health, my growth, and my purpose. I had no structure, and I mistook the grind for structure. My ego was out of control. And your ego will either serve you or will it destroy you. You either turn it into confidence or it creates catastrophe. And I made a decision. I stayed stuck for years until I made the decision to change. Now let's talk about the word transition. There's a common misconception. When people hear transition, especially in the veteran space, they think of a process, something linear, something that's supposed to just happen once we take off the uniform and we don't know how long it takes. But the reality is that if you've lived it, you know that it's not that simple. It's not that clean. The definition. Transition is the process or a period of changing from one state or condition to another. Sounds simple, right? The sticking point, however, is that while we know there's a lot of veterans who are stuck, because transition makes it sound like it's just a period of time, like it'll naturally work itself out, like things will just magically shift into place, and it doesn't. Not unless you take full ownership of it. Not unless you choose the control of your own resets. So why a reset? Let's talk about the word reset. The definition is to set again or differently, to restore to a new starting position. That's what we are doing here today, guys, because it is beyond transition. This masterclass isn't just about managing transition. It's about calling for a hard reset, because a reset puts you back in the driver's seat. It's not passive. It's not about waiting it out. It's deciding to take back control of your structure, your mindset, your health, and your habits. We have to draw the line. We have to draw a line in the sand and say, I'm starting over, but this time I'm doing it on purpose, with purpose. Transition happens to you. A reset is something you create. And that's exactly what we are doing here today. I'm going to walk you through the 5 pillars of what I believe creates a true vet reset. The 5 pillars. Number 1, rebuild structure and discipline without the military, creating your own framework through success. Number 2, create connections that actually matter, building relationships that elevate you. Number 3, control the ego and embrace growth, transforming pride into progress. Number 4, place yourself first, prioritizing your well-being to better serve others. And number 5, take full ownership, becoming the commander of your own life. Now, my main mission in life is to create success in society for every veteran after service. This isn't just a concept I throw around. It is the heartbeat behind every decision and every action that I take. Because when I see another veteran struggling with that mental health, with substance abuse, or a sense of hopelessness, I can't just stand by. I refuse to watch another child lose their father because he believed his life had no value or purpose beyond his time in uniform. I want to help you change the trajectory of your life, to expand your vision of what's possible for you, and to truly believe that you can achieve the impossible. As we grow through these pillars, I'm asking you to do one thing and one thing only. Think about how you can apply each one right now. Think about where you are not showing up. Not tomorrow or next month, because that's the perfect time, and the perfect time doesn't exist. There will always be excuses waiting in the wings, but those excuses can be transformed into reasons to push harder. Let them become the fire that propels you forward, not the chains that hold you back. So pillar number 1, let's get into it. Rebuild structure and discipline without the military. We have to be willing to have personal growth, becoming who you want to be, developing consistent routines, daily habits that actually build discipline, having clear direction, knowing your purpose and goals, and having a strong foundation, creating your own structure. Let's kick it off with a story that might sound familiar. Around 5 years into what I'd initially thought would be a smooth 10-year transition, I slammed into a wall. Outwardly, I appeared solid. I was a full-time police officer. I had the badge, the steady paycheck, and what looked like purpose. But on the inside, I was crumbling. I was drinking daily, chain smoking, and throwing myself into work just to avoid dealing with my personal mess. My health spiraled down. My marriage fell apart, and I was furious at everyone else when I was actually furious at myself. You see, in the military, you have a built-in system of discipline, someone telling you where to go and when to show up. But once that structure disappeared, I never replaced it with anything that kept me grounded. Eventually, I had to face the chaos head on. My weight gain, the failed marriage, the relentless resentment, the constant drinking, and realize the common thread about all of these was me. Now, that might have been one of the hardest pills to swallow, but it was the spark that I needed, because until then, I'd been trying to fill the void without taking a hard look at my own role in creating it, what I had done to myself. There has to be a shift. There has to be a moment of clarity. The brutal moment of clarity lit a fire under me. I'd been running on autopilot, telling myself I was fine. And then the real change happened. The truth was, if I wanted to change my life, I had to actually change my life. No more halfway attempts. I developed non-negotiables. I started establishing what I call non-negotiables: daily cold showers, consistent workouts, and a hard stop on the constant partying. I had to cut ties. One of the biggest hurdles was cutting ties with people who enabled my old habits. It felt like ripping off a piece of my own identity. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that piece was toxic and it needed to go. I couldn't keep saying, one day I'll handle it, because one day never arrives. The only way to truly reset was to commit here and now to a new set of rules that actually put me back in control. I had to face the uncomfortable. I started journaling. Journaling was a game changer for me. It became a personal debriefing session, almost like talking to my old commanding officer. But this time, I was the CEO and the grunt. It was me talking to myself, and there is no perfect way to journal. It's about putting things on paper that you need to get out of your head. And the little trick that I'll give you guys, it has to be something that no one else will ever read, because if you do that with the fear of someone one day reading it, you will not be honest with yourself. Self-improvement. I dove into self-improvement books, especially 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. But I didn't just read it passively. I would take one rule, chew on it, and ask, how do I apply this today? I had to embrace discomfort. I'm not going to lie, it felt weird. Not waking up and immediately reaching for a drink or a smoke was jarring for me, because that's all I used to do. Questioning my own motives, challenging my ego, none of it was comfortable. It was freaking hard. And I had to find direction. But that tight, uneasy feeling in my gut was a beacon telling me I was finally stepping out of the old destructive patterns. It's supposed to feel uncomfortable. It's supposed to be hard. If it was easy, everybody would do it. We've heard this before. And then for the first time in years, I was actually holding myself accountable in the way that the Marine Corps once did, except now I was the one setting my own standard of life. The 1-month game changer. 30 days. What shocked me was how quickly my mindset shifted. Physical changes, like dropping the weight or boosting my endurance, always take time, but the internal transformation happened overnight. You can't flip that switch. You have to have 100% commitment. Within about a month, I found myself waking up with purpose I hadn't felt in years. I treated people differently. I saw possibilities where before I only saw dead ends. With one decision. People love to say, you can't change your life in 30 days. I wholeheartedly disagree. True, you won't see a six-pack in a month, but you can become a completely different person mentally by deciding to show up differently. It is all about that crucial choice. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to lead myself to a better life. Once you commit, Doors that you never noticed before just start swinging open. And when they do, you'll be ready to walk through them. Takeaways from pillar number 1. You have to own your situation. Take a hard look at your life and recognize that if you're in a mess, you probably played a role in creating it. Ownership is your first step towards real change. Set non-negotiables. Develop a schedule for yourself. Put it on your calendar. Set them to repeat. Daily cold showers, regular workouts, mindful eating. These become your new marching orders. They're not optional if you want lasting results. And you have to embrace discomfort. Awkwardness, uncertainty, these are actually signs that you are on the edge of transformation. You're about to break through. Push through them instead of running away from them. And reprogram your mind. Journaling and intentional reading can rewire how you see yourself and your capabilities. Apply what you learn immediately. Don't just open up a book and tell yourself, I'm going to read through this. Do something about it every single time that you open up that book. And decide to commit. The mental reset can happen in an instant once you commit to a disciplined approach. The rest of your life begins to align with that decision. So we talked about structure, connections, growth, self-care, and ownership. So what's the essence of rebuilding structure and discipline after the uniform comes off? Structure alone isn't enough. We are meant to do life with people. It's not about doing it solo. Even if we think we can handle everything ourselves, that's why pillar number 2 is all about creating connections that actually matter. Because the people that you surround yourself with can make or break your momentum. So pillar number 2 is create connections that actually matter. The echo chamber. For the longest time, I surrounded myself with veterans who just wanted to drink all the time. We'd hang out in those negative veteran Facebook groups where the main pastime was trash talking each other and complaining about every little thing. I thought I was doing the right thing by sticking with like-minded people. After all, these guys had shared experiences with me. Then I jumped headfirst into law enforcement because I figured it was another group that would get me. The problem with all this, and what I missed, is that staying in a narrow circle meant I kept hearing the same opinions, the same complaints, and the same excuses on repeat. I was shutting out fresh perspectives that could have challenged me to actually grow. The truth is, when you cling to the same crowd, and especially when that crowd is negative, you end up in an echo chamber, and that was me. Locked in a cycle of heavy drinking, tough guy posturing, and pushing away anyone who didn't fit that mold. The limitation. So I finally convinced myself that being the toughest son of a bitch around meant I didn't need help or new information from anybody else. But that attitude was the quickest way to stop my progress, keep me ignorant, and keep me from becoming the person I actually wanted to be. You have to have a wake-up call here, guys. There's a mirror effect that when you have a wake-up call and you realize that your friends were basically you, a mirror reflecting back what I was turning myself into. They were boozing heavily, running through relationships, and doing zero personal development. And it's wasted potential. I started to see how much potential growth I'd wasted because I was stubbornly refusing to branch out. I wasn't putting myself out of my comfort zone. I wasn't pushing myself out. I never tried to meet new people or hear a different take on life. I was basically caging myself inside a loop of my own making. And then one day I thought, what would happen if I quit surrounding myself with the same voices and actually let in some new perspectives? That question was the crack that I needed to have that door open for me. The realization I had was that if I wanted a different outcome, better health, deeper relationship, bigger goals, I had to shift my environment first. I had to break out of the circle that kept me from evolving. And we all know who these people are. We all know who the people in our lives are that are keeping us stuck in the same place over and over again because it feels comfortable, because it's what we know. It's a reflection of who we are. But if we want more, we have to be willing to evolve and move out of these relationships. So we have to step into better rooms. We have to have new activities. We have to have better content, personal time, continuous learning. We have to find new mentors. So what did I do? I took a leap and I started trying things that never, ever had an interest or were on my radar before. I signed up for jiu-jitsu classes, which pushed me to get physically uncomfortable and learn from folks I might have overlooked before. I cut out those negative Facebook groups and I swapped them for podcasts that talked about growth, mindset, and business. And shameless plug, the Vet Rise podcast, it's there for all of you to listen to right now, right here. I carved out actual time for myself because let's be honest, I was pouring my energy into everyone else's problems without ever filling my own tank. That's when I realized something important. Learning doesn't care about your rank, your age, or your job title. Anyone can teach you something, even if they are older or younger than you, if you are open to listening. Civilians too, it doesn't matter who it is. And I found mentors. I got involved in professional groups. And I let myself be the rookie in the room again. And God damn it, it was hard, but it was humbling. Yes, it was also the exact jolt that I needed to remind me I was capable of so much more than I was giving myself credit for. So we have to push back and say some painful goodbyes here. Walking away from my old circles wasn't a cakewalk. People would say, "You've changed," like it was a bad thing. Sometimes they got angry or defensive because they preferred the old version of me, the version that joined them in complaining and partying every weekend. But the more I listened to their criticisms, the more I realized they just wanted me to stay at their level, where my success and everything was very, very much used to them. And it stung, it hurt. I had to understand that I had to challenge myself to grow. Some friendships I'd had for years, they faded away almost overnight. But I had to make that choice. I had to make the commitment for myself. I had to understand that if I wanted to make a change, I had to make that change for myself. When I finally let go of those relationships, it felt like a weight fell off my shoulders. It created space for new people. People wanted to see me thrive, people who believed in me, and even when I doubted myself. Pillar number 2, expanding your world. It's not enough to leave one negative group and then just sit alone, though. You have to actively find new environments to challenge you and help you grow. Look for those people who make you question your limits and strive for bigger goals. And don't assume they have to be veterans. In fact, you often learn the most from people whose backgrounds are nothing like yours. That's how you get exposed to completely different ways of thinking and living. Maybe you try a hobby you've never considered, like rock climbing or art classes. Maybe you sign up for a coding boot camp or a business mastermind group, or just start listening to a podcast you would typically scroll past. As soon as you do that, you realize just how big this world is and how many new doors you can open. That's where delusional optimism starts to build. The kind of belief that says, I'm unstoppable if I don't quit. Because now you're around people who push you to keep going and do more in life. Now you're around people who want you to dream bigger. So key takeaway for pillar number 2. We have to stop living in an echo chamber. If you are constantly around people who never grow or push themselves, you'll never see the potential that lies beyond your comfort zone. You're in your safe space. Look at your circle. Who are you becoming because of the people around you? If they're not challenging you, they might actually be holding you back. You have to be open to anyone who can teach you. Don't limit yourself to a usual tribe. A 20-year-old student or a 60-year-old retiree could have insights that actually transform your life. And embrace the pushback. Yes, people will tell you that you've changed, but that is exactly the point. Change is a sign that you're growing. And invest in yourself. Overcommitting to everyone else can leave you drained and stuck. Focus on the growth opportunities that actually fuel you. So let's talk about pillar number 3, breaking free. Pillar number 2, we have to find connections that elevate you instead of burying you in the same old routines. We have to avoid the traps, because if you don't, you end up trapped. Repeating the same mistakes and calling it normal. We think it's normal, but it's not. So we're going to tackle controlling your ego, because a big part of personal growth is being willing to say, I don't know everything, and that's okay. Get ready, because the next pillar can make or break your progress. Pillar number 3, control the ego and embrace growth. Military mindset. So when I left the military, I was convinced I had it all figured out. I was a 22-year-old Scout Sniper team leader and the chief scout of a Scout Sniper platoon, so it felt like I had every skill that I would ever need. I tell myself, I don't need help. I don't need the VA. I can handle everything. Why wouldn't I? In the service, success often meant pushing harder, embracing chaos, and winning the fight by sheer force of will. However, in the civilian world, that same attitude can actually become a liability if you don't learn to adapt it. That's where ego comes into play. If you are not careful, you end up self-sabotaging your own progress simply because you refuse to ask for help, or you accept that someone else might know more than you do in a particular area. We have to change this. We have to use it for our benefit. So what does ego look like? Well, for me, ego took the form of denial and avoidance. I would drink too much and pretend it was normal. I'd ignore any situation that made me uncomfortable. I would talk down opportunities I didn't understand. And I would treat constructive feedback like a personal threat, like an attack on me. In my mind, if someone questioned me, they were attacking my identity as a tough guy, as if I were back in the combat zone under fire. But that blocks your growth, guys. Here's the thing. That mindset was blocking me from growth. Whenever a 20-year-old manager at my civilian job tried to show me a better way of doing something, I'd shrug it off and roll my eyes. I was so worried about maintaining my image of strength that I refused to see all the ways I could actually improve. And that's the real danger of ego. It doesn't just keep you from admitting you're wrong, it prevents you from ever getting better. So we have to draw a line in the sand. We have to understand that there needs to be a translation. Things have to grow, they have to change. The military mindset tells you they don't get it. Let's think about what we can change with that. Maybe you have to learn to adapt. They haven't seen what I've seen. My experiences give me unique perspectives. They'll never understand me. I can build bridges of understanding. I have to stand apart. I have to make sure that I actually blend in for the right reasons, the right ways, and adapt. We're waging war against an environment that we are not used to. We are now in this place that doesn't understand us, and it's so hard to try and fit in. Maybe you need to take those advantages and actually do something with them and find new opportunities. A huge issue for many of us veterans is that we subconsciously draw this line between ourselves and society, like it's us versus them. We think they don't get it. They haven't seen what I've seen. They'll never understand me. In the military, we're taught to adapt to any environment, whether it's desert, jungle, urban terrain, you name it. Get out here, in the real world, we forget that skill. We treat the civilian world as the new war zone, and we stand apart from it rather than learning to blend, adapt, and actually become a part of it. But there's a difference between fitting in and truly integrating. You still have that monster inside of you, the one that can push through adversity, but you don't need to unleash it every turn. The real growth happens when you admit that you can be wrong or that you don't have all the answers. When you look around and say, okay, this is a brand new world and I'm going to pay attention to how it works. The moment you do that, you stop waging war against your environment and you start taking full advantage of it. We have to embrace a new approach. You have to channel your energy. Controlling your ego doesn't mean losing your edge. It means channeling it differently. You have to find balance. You can still be strong, determined, and relentless when needed. We also learn to be flexible, to ask questions, and to acknowledge other people's expertise. And this is how you build true confidence. This is how you transform your ego into true confidence, by constantly sharpening your skills and knowledge rather than assuming you've already arrived. And you have to embrace growth. Sometimes that means swallowing your pride and saying, I need help with this. Or letting a younger coworker teach you a new system. Or realizing that not every criticism is an insult. Sometimes it's the key to leveling up. You can only get better when you allow yourself to learn from everyone and anyone. So you have to be willing to put yourself out there and control the ego for your benefit. Break free from it. If you really want to break free from the ego's grip, you have to put yourself in situations that test you. Sign up for a course on a subject that you know nothing about. Go to a seminar led by someone who is not in your usual circle. Try a new physical challenge that makes you feel like a complete beginner. Yes, it might be awkward at first. Yes, you might feel stupid, but that's where growth is. Remember the training that you have. In the military, we were constantly evaluated by superiors, by our peers, sometimes even by subordinates. Out here, you might feel that same sense of judgment. But more often than not, people are just trying to figure out their own path. They're not here to tear you down. Everyone is just trying to figure out their lives. And I want you guys to take calculated risks. Once you realize that, you start taking those calculated risks, asking the dumb questions, and welcoming feedback. And that's when the civilian world becomes less of a battlefield and more of a potential playground for your potential. We have to look at the bigger picture. We have to understand that to advance as a leader, you have to do these things. You have to ultimately understand that advancing as a leader, the goal here is to keep advancing as a leader of yourself and of those around you. We have to avoid the ego trap. If you stay trapped in your own ego, refusing to bend or learn, you'll never fully step into the life that you're capable of building. And I want you guys to be absolutely delusional in what you can do. The past you is no longer here. Everything starts right now. We have to move beyond that past. You'll remain in that limited space where your past accomplishments define you, and they don't. Instead of your current and future growth, it is possible. We have to open new doors. By controlling your ego, by blending humility with the grit that you gain in the service, you open up countless new doors. We have to embrace maturity. When you admit that you don't know everything, it is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of maturity. It's the moment that you actually start to invite growth into your life and you learn new things. And we have to adapt with confidence. Once you accept that mindset, you're going to find yourself navigating the civilian world more confident, with better relationships and the willingness to adapt to whatever challenges come your way. The old you is not present anymore. You have to continue to audit your life and see what changes you are making to continue to grow in ways you've never thought you could grow. So again, key takeaways here. Acknowledge your blind spots. Recognize that clinging to the "I can handle everything" mentality can keep you from exploring new opportunities and perspectives. I want you to stop viewing civilians as the enemy. They are not out to get you. Adapting to your new environment is a skill that you already learned in the military. Use it wisely. Ask for help without shame. Help is not a crutch, it is a stepping stone. The real strength comes from knowing when to lean on others to grow. Stay teachable. From younger managers to different industries, everyone has something to offer you if you're open to it. And embrace the beginner mindset. Voluntary stepping into challenges or unfamiliar situations is the fastest way to expand your skills and crush your ego. If you are the biggest fish in the pond, that pond is too small for you. You should want more. You should be craving more. So let's talk about transition to pillar number 4. This is the essence of pillar number 3. Finding balance, controlling the ego, prioritizing self, creating impact. When we trade the blind pride for an attitude that actually fuels your growth, now I want to talk about what happens when you don't prioritize yourself at all, because you can't keep moving forward if you're constantly running on empty. In the next pillar, we're going to break down why placing yourself first is not selfish. It is essential for long-term success and impact. And a lot of you guys have problems with this because it's something that we all have problem with, because we feel like we have to give, because that's what we were taught in the military. Pillar number 4, place yourself first. The sudden freedom. When you get out of the military, you come face to face with something that feels downright strange. Nobody is telling you what to do anymore. For years, it was teams first, mission first. We showed up because that's what was expected of us. And honestly, we loved it. We thrived on being needed. Think about that. We thrived on being needed. And the new reality is that once you're out, guess who's looking out for you? Nobody but you. There's no first sergeant waiting to hand you orders, no commander making sure you don't fall off track, not even a battle buddy around to keep you accountable. It's all on you. There is no team leader. And we have to make sure that we pay attention to the warning signs. One of the easiest ways to spot that you are not putting yourself first is when you notice those little changes stacking up. Your clothes are getting tighter. Your workouts are going out the window. You are binge eating junk food, downing a few drinks, extra drinks all the time. And you're doing this because you have no one else left to serve. So you feel like you can't serve yourself first until you're useful to someone else. And I lived it. Trust me. I know this because I lived it. I threw everything I had into my job as a police officer. I worked the overtime. I took on every extra task. I showed up first. I left last. Until I looked in the mirror one day and I realized I'd let myself slide into a fog of stress. The weight gain and the isolation. I was giving 100% to everyone else and leaving nothing in the tank for my own health or happiness. You have to fill your own cup first. I have a good friend of mine who I think is here today, Brandon Bowman, who gave me this analogy that it really stuck with me when he was on my podcast a while ago. The tugboat trap. So why do we do this? We become this tugboat that always feels like we have to be out in the ocean, braving the storm, bringing everybody into safety, but yet we are out there taking on the fight. Why do we volunteer for every committee, every event, and every weekend project under the sun? Because it feels like we still have the mission, like we're serving a purpose bigger than ourselves. But here's the catch. If your own cup is bone dry, you've got nothing left to give. You have to be a lighthouse. Like I mentioned, a buddy of mine gave me a game-changing analogy. You can't be the tugboat charging into the storm over and over, trying to tow everyone else to safety. If you do, you will flood your own hull, and eventually you will sink. Instead, be the lighthouse, solid, unwavering, sending out that beam of guidance so others can find their way. Sure, a tugboat can help 1 or 2 ships at a time, but a lighthouse helps everyone who sees it without destroying itself in the process. Be the lighthouse. Be an inspiration for people. Be the way that people can learn from you. We have to push past the guilt, because there is a guilt factor. Now, maybe you feel guilty prioritizing yourself. You think, well, that's selfish. I should be helping others first. But the truth is, if you neglect your own physical, mental, and emotional health, you won't be in any shape to help anybody. We have to work on improving our relationships. Your relationships improve because you're not constantly running on fumes. Your career is going to blossom because you're tackling challenges with a clear head. You are actually paying attention to what you need and what you need to do. And everything else levels up when you do. The byproduct of success in one area of your life is success in every area of your life. And you pull back a little bit and you commit to getting in shape physically and mentally. Suddenly, you have more energy, more confidence, and way more to offer the people around you. So pay attention to the changes. Ask yourself, have I gained weight? Am I snapping at people more often? Do I have a short temper? Have I dropped my own habits? Have I stopped working on my personal goals? These aren't just minor hiccups. They are the red flags that you need to pay attention to. They're the warning signs that you have flipped back into that give mindset without ever refueling your own tank. And it's up to you to correct course, nobody else. So we have to have a different mindset, guys. It's about self-respect. It's not selfishness. The moment you decide to prioritize yourself isn't an act of selfishness. It's an act of self-respect, of self-love. That might look like scheduling gym time before taking on new commitments. Or it might mean saying no to things that drain your energy, or not taking that phone call in the middle of the day just because somebody says that they need something from you. You have to remember this. Remember the lighthouse. If doing these things stirs up guilt, remind yourself you can't save anyone if you're drowning. This is where being the lighthouse matters. You are not abandoning the mission. You are fortifying your ability to carry out long-term, in the long run. And small steps matter. Remember, none of this has to be flashy. It can be as simple as reading a chapter of a life-changing book each morning, or taking an online course for yourself that builds a skill that you've been curious about, and doing something for yourself before you say yes to everybody else. When people ask you for your time, it is not just your time that you are giving away, it is your energy as well. It is your energy as well. This is the mental shift that matters more than anything else you know. Even those small steps can create a mental shift that says, I'm investing in myself so I can be better for my family, my friends, and my community. You have to be able to put yourself first so you can give people a little bit more than you can actually give when you are running on empty. So remember, from number 4, no one is coming to save you. The chain command is gone. You're on your own authority, so it's on you to protect and nurture your well-being. Look for the early warning signs, the weight gain, more drinks than usual, constant fatigue. These are your body and mind waving red flags in front of you to pay attention. Be the lighthouse, not the tugboat. A lighthouse stands strong, and it's lighting the path for everyone without sinking under the weight of repeated rescue missions. Over-volunteering isn't always altruistic. Sometimes it's just chasing that needed feeling. Check your motives and make sure you're not emptying your own tank just because you feel like you need to feel needed all the time. When you do these things, this is when you can open up your world to actually embrace personal growth. PT, reading, learning new skills. These aren't luxuries. These are things that you should be doing. They are essential investments in your future self, and you will be able to do more of these when you stop giving away all your time and all your energy to people. So that's the heart of pillar number 4. Placing yourself first so you don't end up drifting, or worse, sinking. When you fill your own cup, you are infinitely more capable of supporting the people who rely on you. In our next pillar, we're going to talk about taking full ownership. No more passing the buck. No more waiting for permission to change your life. It's time to put the final piece in place and unleash your full potential, guys. Taking full ownership. Freedom. Talking about unlocking your full potential. Taking action with it. Making immediate changes. Responsibility. Accepting your role and outcomes. And then being the leader of your own life. Taking full ownership means recognizing that every aspect of your life, good or bad, is ultimately on you. All of it. It means stepping out of the shadows of the chain of command and realizing you are your own commander of your own future now. In the military, you had a mission passed down from above. Now you have to set the mission. If something goes wrong, there's nobody else to blame. And that can feel like you are standing on a tightrope without a net, but it has to be on you. And here's the upside to all of this. Once you fully embrace that responsibility, you unlock a freedom that most people never experience, because nobody loves to take ownership of everything, because it's a very hard thing to do. There's no more waiting on the VA, blaming the job market, or cursing your past or what happened to you, this, that, or the other. You have to take ownership. Taking ownership forces you to look in the mirror and say, I am exactly where I am at because of my decisions. And if I don't like it, I can do something about it starting right now. The moment of realization. I had a massive wake-up call when I realized that the same problems that kept cycling through my life were mine. I was isolating myself. I was sliding from one bad relationship to another and making excuses for all the chaos that I was causing in my life. I was drinking too much. I wasn't dealing with my PTSD, and I definitely wasn't talking to a therapist about it. Now, on the surface, I might have looked okay on the surface, doing well at work, paying the bills, but behind closed doors, I was creating a toxic environment for myself and the people around me. And after a while, I got sick of hearing my own excuses. The script in my head was always saying, I'm fine, I've got this, I don't need help. Deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. And I had to break the cycle. I knew that if I kept doing the same things, I'd stayed stuck in the same rut forever. It was time to break the cycle and figure out how to move forward with intention. Shift into action, guys. One of the biggest turning points for me was diving into Jocko's Willink's Extreme Ownership and Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. I didn't just skim those books, I devoured them. And I immediately put what I'd learned into action, one chapter at a time, one action at a time. It wasn't about highlighting a bunch of quotes for social media. It wasn't about posting about it. It was about getting out of bed the next morning and behaving differently in my day-to-day life because I started to take not only ownership of my life, but I started making sure that every single rule in the book that I read from Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, practice. Before I move on to chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, I made sure that every single chapter, I did something with it. I scheduled therapy sessions for my PTSD. I made the phone calls I've been avoiding. I cut down on the drinking, the partying. My mindset shifted from, well, this is my life, it sucks, to, if my life can be this messed up because of my decisions, imagine how much better it could be if I started making better ones. And that small change in perspective made a huge difference for me. I was no longer just passively living. I was actively actually doing something about it and shaping my reality. Own your situation and you can own your future. You have to illuminate your reality. You have to audit your life. Taking ownership is like flipping on a light switch in a pitch black room. You don't know what you don't know. Suddenly you see all the mess that you need to clean up. You have to be honest about it. But at least you're not stumbling around in the dark anymore. You know what you have to deal with. You have to find clarity. Ownership gives you that. It gives you clarity. If you are stuck in a soul-crushing job, then go find or create something better. If your relationship is in shambles, then own your role in it. Then decide whether you can fix it or if you need to walk away. Seek solutions. You might not have all the answers right away, but the act of admitting this is on me puts the power back in your hands to actually do something about it, to change it. And then take that courageous action that you are so afraid of. I quit my job last year, not because I had every detail figured out, but because I refused to let fear keep dictating my future. I started my own company, knowing I would learn, adapt, and pivot as needed. It was on me. That's what ownership lets you do. It frees you from waiting on someone else's permission to live the life that you want. Turn fault into fuel. The power of fault. We tend to treat the word fault like it's a curse, but I see it as an opportunity. If something is my fault, then I'm the one who can fix it. If I keep blaming the government, my upbringing, the system, I'm basically saying I have no power over my circumstances, and that's a trap. You become a passenger in your own life. You tell yourself that you can't do anything about it, and it's not true. There is freedom in owning it. The moment that you say, it's my fault, you also say, I can fix this. Ownership lifts you out of the mindset of helplessness. Tomorrow can completely look different from today if you stop running from your mistakes and you start harnessing them for growth. Own what you've done and then do something about it. That's real freedom. Knowing that you're not at the mercy of outside forces every time that you point the finger at someone or something. You are literally giving away all your power, and you are saying that person or this thing has all the control over the outcome of my life. And there is nothing sadder than that, in my opinion. How did this impact my life? I actually started to rebuild relationships. I chose ownership, and I changed everything for me. I rebuilt relationships. I drew healthier boundaries, and I had none before. And I showed up in ways I had never done before. I am present. Now my kids see me as a father who's actually engaged in the present moment, not just coasting on the accomplishments of yesterday. I want them to remember me for what I'm doing now. not just for what I did in the uniform. They weren't even around then. Every day I wake up with a clear vision of what I am working towards. Every day I make sure that all my actions align with my goals and my values and my principles, because if they don't, you are working backwards. Failure doesn't scare me because I know I can adjust and then try again. And because of this, I have continuous growth. That's the magic of ownership. Every time that you stumble, it's a lesson instead of a dead end. Every challenge becomes a chance to learn something new. And having that mindset of complete ownership, of radical responsibility, whatever you want to call it, that willingness to keep growing, that's what truly transformed my life. So key takeaways from pillar number 5, everything is on you. No scapegoats, no passing the buck. You are the commander of your own life now. Apply what you learn ASAP. Knowledge is useless if it just collects dust. Information without implementation is just noise. Put the new insights into practice right away. Take something away from this and do something about it today. Stop waiting and start deciding. If you hate your job, if you despise your routine, if you are unhappy with who you look at in the mirror, do something to change it. You do have control. And if there's one thing that you take away from all of this today, is that you do have control of your life. If you are unhappy with where you are at, that means that you can do something about it. What we don't hate, we will tolerate. So if you are unhappy with where you're at, sometimes you truly have to understand that you are so unhappy that you need to do something about it. It needs to change. And maybe at first it starts from a place of anger, but eventually it does have to change and translate into a place of love. It has to. Transform your faults into fuel. When you start to see your mistakes as your own, it means that you have the power to fix them and grow from them and learn from them. And have a vision. Keep that vision. Set your sights on a future that you want. And then use your daily actions to steer yourself there. Everything that you do should be in alignment with your goals and your values and your principles, no matter how small it is. Final thoughts on pillar number 5. Ownership doesn't mean that it's an end to challenges. It means that no matter what comes your way, you decide how to respond, not react. You become the architect of your own life instead of a victim of your circumstances. So if you're done pointing fingers and are ready to start building something better, this is your moment. You hold the power to make tomorrow radically different from today, simply by choosing to own your decisions and take purposeful action. I'm going to give you a little bonus advice right here. This is something that I use daily to make my life 10 times easier. This is the high performer mindset. Lowering your action threshold and raising your immediate feedback loop. So what does this mean? Lowering your action threshold. I want you to start thinking about your day a little bit different. Think about how you can lower your action threshold and raise your feedback loop. This might sound like some abstract personal development jargon, but it's actually one of the most practical mindset shifts you can make. Lowering your action threshold means you intentionally make it easier to take the action you already know that you need to take. Because let's be honest, you already know what you're supposed to be doing. You know you should work out. You know you should hit your water goal. You know that you should eat cleaner and prep your meals. The issue isn't knowledge. It's friction. It's the resistance you feel in the moment. So the solution is to make it easier. Lower your action threshold. That means laying out your clothes the night before so there's no decision to make in the morning. That means keeping your meal prep so stupidly simple you don't have to think twice. Just open up the fridge and eat. That means setting up your training environment in advance so there's no excuse when it's time to work. That means putting your workouts on your calendar, adding the address in there, setting them to repeat, and making sure that when you leave work, you turn on your calendar, you open up your GPS, and it takes you to your gym. Raising your feedback loop. When you reduce friction, you reduce the excuses, and that's when discipline starts to feel automatic. Not because you magically become more motivated, but because you are starting to design your life to make things easier for yourself. Now let's talk about raising your feedback loop. Most people are terrible at this. They hit a small win, and instead of celebrating it, they dismiss it. They say, yeah, I drank my water, but I didn't hit my protein. Or I did my workout, but I didn't push as hard as I could have. That mindset is poison. When you constantly move the goalposts, you train your brain to believe that nothing is ever good enough. And eventually, you stop even noticing the progress you're making. So raising your feedback loop means you become hyper aware of your own wins. So you hit your water goal, acknowledge it. You got your workout even though you were tired. That matters. You show up to your coaching call even when your mind told you, not to. That's discipline. You have to train yourself to catch every freaking win, to recognize them, and to celebrate them in real time, because those are the building blocks of momentum. Those are the moments that stack into real identity change. This takes self-awareness. It takes you pausing in your day and saying, what did I do right today that made my life better? Even if it's small, even if it's just showing up today, even if it's just 1%, recognize it, stack it, and use it, because that is how it becomes permanent. Not through huge, overwhelming changes, but through small actions made easier and small wins made obvious. That's how you build a lifestyle that sticks with you. That's how you hardwire a new identity from the ground up. So who are you really? So you guys heard me talk about the 5 pillars. Let's talk about you for a minute. I want each and every one of you guys to understand the uniform doesn't define your value. Who are you really? Taking off the uniform doesn't change the value of who you are. That chapter of your life wasn't a gap year in your life. It was the foundation. You shouldn't look back on your time in the military as something separate from who you are today. That experience gave you structure, discipline, leadership, grit, and the ability to perform under pressure. Those qualities are not only still in you, they are your advantage. So how can we use our military skills effectively? The challenge now is knowing how to use them. It's not about abandoning everything from the military. It's about identifying what parts still serve you and what parts are holding you back. You have to be brutally honest with yourself. That means adjusting your leadership style. It means letting go of habits or mindsets that no longer fit. It means checking your ego. And instead of letting it control you, turning it into that quiet confidence. Your value remains. Too many veterans carry around the belief that because they're no longer in uniform, they've lost their purpose. But that's not true. The uniform didn't give you value. It revealed it. That value still exists. It's in how you show up, how you lead, how you take ownership of your outcomes. And I'll be honest, I would do it all over again. Because once I stopped trying to escape the parts of myself I didn't like and instead focused on changing them, everything shifted for me. I became the kind of man I actually respected. Not because I was perfect. I'm far from it. But because I was honest, self-aware, and committed to doing the work. That's where real growth starts. And if you're willing to go there, you will realize that your best chapter hasn't been written yet. It's just the beginning. So embrace the multidimensional self, because there's no one thing that defines your identity. Be more than just a lifestyle. You're not the gym guy. You're not the motivated one. You're not just a veteran. You're not just a father. You're not being the one who's always on point with the routine. Just because something becomes your lifestyle doesn't mean it has to become your whole life. Have an identity shift. And it damn sure doesn't mean it needs to be the only way that you define yourself. See, when you're out of the military, everything shifts. The structure is gone, the brotherhood fades, and you feel like you've lost who you are. So what do most people do? They scramble to find the next thing, something to latch onto, something to feel solid again. For a lot of us, that thing became fitness or business, or becoming a cop, or a firefighter, or grinding nonstop, or staying busy just to avoid the silence. But we call that a lifestyle. But let's be real, it's a cover, a new uniform, a mask. Because they're trying to recreate that sense of purpose that we had when we wore that old one. You are more than your identity. All of it is part of it. You're not just a veteran. You're not just a cop or a firefighter or a student. You're not just a dad or a partner or a hard-ass worker. You're not just a job title, not a label, not just a rank or a past version of yourself. You're all of it. And until you stop trying to live as one piece of yourself, until you stop clinging to a single identity just to feel worthy, you are going to keep playing small. That is what the Vet Reset is all about today. This is about remembering that you're a multidimensional human being. It's about knowing that, yeah, the military gave you skills, but it didn't give you your identity. That part is still yours to build. The real work begins now, beyond the uniform. Too many veterans think that when the work ends when the uniform comes off. But you have to lead yourself now. You have to be that voice of reason that is louder than any drill instructor ever was. You have to be willing to do the hard shit. You have to be willing to ask yourself the hard questions. What do you want to build? What do you want to do? Where do I want to take my life? And I've been through this myself. I thought being a veteran was enough. I thought being a coach would fix it, but those are just pieces, roles. And if I wanted to really lead, if I wanted to find peace, I had to stop leading myself to just one box. So what are you hiding? And I'm asking you guys, I want you to be super freaking honest with yourself. What else is it that you have been hiding from? What parts of your identity are you ready to reclaim? Because you don't need permission from anybody. You don't need permission from anybody to grow. You just need to stop waiting for it. You can rebuild your identity. You can reimagine your purpose. You can evolve into someone the old you wouldn't even recognize. And you need to believe in more. You got to believe that there's more possible for you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. You could have been anywhere else tonight, but you're here, and that means something. I hope this masterclass lit a fire under you. Maybe you felt some clarity you haven't had in a while. Maybe you got smacked in the face with some hard truth, or maybe, just maybe, you remembered that your story isn't over, that you're not done yet, that there is more in you. Because listen, your life did not peak in the military. The uniform might be in the closet, but your mission isn't over. So just to review the 5 pillars. Rebuild structure. Create your own framework for success without military structure. It is on you. It is your responsibility to start creating a structure, a routine, a discipline, a schedule, all of it for yourself. Create connections, build relationships that elevate you and challenge you. Do not feel like you have to be stuck with the same people that you've had in your life for the rest of your life. Control your ego. Transform pride into growth and continuous learning. Start placing yourself first. Fill your own cup to better serve others and take ownership. Become the commander of your own life and your future. Now, we've covered the 5 essential pillars that form the foundation of a successful veteran reset. Each of these elements work together to create a comprehensive approach to rebuilding your life after service, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, I don't care. It doesn't matter. And by implementing these principles, you can transform your transition experience from one struggle to another. You can start doing something about it right now, right here. Remember that this isn't about perfection. It's about progress. It's about paying attention to what you are doing. You don't need to master all 5 pillars overnight, but you have to start with one area where you feel you need the most improvement and gradually incorporate the others as you build momentum. So your next steps is reflect on the 5 pillars. Take some time to honestly assess where you are at and what you can do about them. Choose one area to start. Take immediate action. Implement at least one small change today based on what you learned today. Remember to lower your action threshold and make it easier to start. And then share your journey. Be the lighthouse. Be a beacon of hope for other people. Connect with other veterans who are on similar paths. Make new friends. Challenge yourself. Your military service was just one chapter of your story. Now it's time to write the next one. And this time, you're holding the pen. The skills, the discipline, the resilience that you developed in uniform are still with you to this day. They're just waiting to be channeled in new directions. Remember, your best days are not behind you. They are ahead of you, and they start right now. And that brings us to the end of another episode of the Vet Rise podcast. If today's episode inspired you, made you think, or simply gave you hope, I have a small favor to ask. Share it with just one veteran or someone you think could benefit from my message. Your share could light a spark for them. You don't know who you might save. For more insights and to join our mission, follow my socials at JP, the Veteran Coach, and explore how we can rise together. Thank you for joining us, for being part of this journey, and for believing in the power of rising together. Until next time, keep pushing forward, keep rising, and never forget that we are stronger together. My name is Juan Perez, and thank you for your time.